Night Wisdom Radio.
Imagine a hall lit by candles on a still winter evening, long before electric light, long before the noise of the modern world had filled every corner of human attention. The room is crowded and warm, voices overlapping in a blur of laughter and ambition, each person pressing forward to be seen and heard, as though visibility itself were a form of power. And yet, at the edges of that room, standing just beyond the bright arc of the candles, there is one person who does not press forward at all. They speak less than the others and watch more than the others, and they carry a kind of quiet that is difficult to define and yet impossible to ignore. When a real decision must be made, when the laughter settles and the room needs someone to actually think, eyes move toward that person without anyone quite knowing why. It was not their volume that drew the room's trust. It was not their charm or the brightness of their smile. It was something rarer and more durable than any of those things. It was the quality of their perception, the sense that they had been watching while others were performing, and that what they had seen had made them wise. Welcome to Night Wisdom Radio, your calm space for long-form philosophical contemplation beneath the stars. I'm glad you are here tonight, and I want you to know that wherever you are, whether you are winding down after a long day, or lying in the quiet dark, with the world finally becoming still around you, this time is yours. Tonight, we begin the Gracián Wisdom Series, and we begin it with the idea that shaped everything the great Spanish philosopher ever wrote, what he called subtle strength. Baltasar Gracián was born in Spain in 1601, a Jesuit priest, a scholar, and one of the most penetrating observers of human nature who ever put ink to paper. He lived in a world of courts and intrigue, of powerful men who rose and fell on the strength of their reputations, their judgment, and their ability to read a room. He watched this world with extraordinary patience and attention, and what he wrote down became one of the most quietly influential books in the history of Western thought, a collection of 300 aphorisms he called The Art of Worldly Wisdom. Gracián did not write for the comfortable. He did not write for those who wanted the world to be simple, or who needed to be told that talent alone was enough, or that goodness always found its reward. He wrote for people who had looked at the world honestly and sensed, somewhere beneath all the noise, that success is rarely a matter of luck or raw ability alone. It is a matter of perception, of how clearly you see what is actually happening around you, as opposed to what people tell you is happening. It is a matter of timing, of knowing when to move and when to be still, when to speak, and when to remain thoughtfully quiet. And most of all, it is a matter of self-command, the rare and undervalued art of governing your own impulses before the world has a chance to govern them for you. We live now in an age that has made noise into a virtue. Everywhere around you, the message is the same. Speak quickly, respond immediately, share your reaction before it cools, post something, say something, make your presence felt before the moment passes and someone else fills it. The algorithm rewards the visible, and so the world runs faster and louder with each passing year, each person performing their certainty for an audience that is itself performing certainty for another audience. And in the middle of all of that, in the center of all that heat and speed, Gracián would lean toward you and speak very quietly. He would say, when the whole world runs on impulse, a single moment of deliberate stillness becomes a form of power. When everyone rushes to speak, the person who first pauses to think becomes genuinely rare, and what is rare always becomes valuable. This is the heart of what Gracián called subtle strength, and it begins with something almost embarrassingly simple. It begins with the decision not to move with the first impulse. When something stirs in you, when anger rises, or excitement floods in, when jealousy tightens in your chest, or flattery warms your vanity, subtle strength is the practice of letting that first wave pass before you decide what to do with it. This pause is not passivity, and it is not weakness, and it is not the cold detachment of someone who has stopped caring. It is the opposite of those things. It is the act of caring enough about your own choices to refuse to surrender them to whatever emotion arrived first. Think about the last time you said something you later regretted. In most cases, if you are honest with yourself, the regret was not really about what you said. It was about when you said it and the condition you were in when you said it. You spoke from the pressure of the moment rather than from your own considered judgment, and the moment, as moments tend to do, pushed you somewhere you did not actually want to go. Gracián had a name for this condition. He called it being governed by ungoverned momentum, the tendency to be carried forward by the force of a situation rather than by the quiet authority of your own intentions. And he spent his entire career as a writer and observer of human affairs, trying to give his readers the tools to interrupt that momentum at precisely the moment when it matters most. The first of those tools is what we might call the intentional pause. In Gracián's world, a careless word spoken in the wrong room could cost a man his reputation in a single afternoon, or his freedom in a single morning. The stakes in your world may look different on the surface, but the underlying architecture is the same. Every conversation you have is a small stage on which something real is always happening. Every room, physical or virtual, has an invisible structure of influence, and every moment inside that structure offers you exactly two paths. The first path is reaction. Someone criticizes you, and something in you fires back before you have fully thought. Someone praises you, and you immediately begin performing for them, giving them more of whatever produced the warmth. Someone challenges your idea, and you defend it on instinct, even the parts that perhaps deserved to be challenged. Reaction is fast, and it is automatic, and it feels in the moment like authenticity, like you are simply being honest about what you feel. But reaction is not really yours. It is borrowed from circumstance. It is what the moment extracted from you before you had the chance to decide what to give. The second path is what Gracián called response. Response and reaction feel nearly identical from the outside, and in the early stages of practice, they may feel nearly identical from the inside as well. The difference is a single interior step that happens so quickly it is easy to miss, and yet it changes everything. In response, you feel the same emotions. You feel the sting of criticism and the warmth of praise and the tightening of challenge just as clearly as before. But before you act on those feelings, you ask one small and powerful question. What outcome do I actually want from this moment? If the action you are about to take does not serve that outcome, you let the action go, not because you are suppressing yourself, but because you have chosen your own intentions over the momentum of the room. This is subtle strength in its most practical form, and Gracián believed it was trainable in anyone who was willing to practice it with enough patience and consistency. The second tool Gracián offers us is what we might call selective revelation. We live in a time that has made transparency into a moral value, as though the more you share of yourself, the more honest you are, and the more honest you are, the more trustworthy you become. There is something true in that idea, but there is also something dangerous in it, and Gracián would have identified the danger immediately. The danger is this: not everyone who has access to your inner world has earned that access, and not everyone who seems to support you is genuinely invested in your flourishing. Gracián was not a cynic. He did not believe that people were fundamentally predatory or that the world was irredeemably hostile. But he was deeply, carefully realistic about the fact that human beings have interests, that we all want things, and that sometimes what someone else wants does not align with what is best for us. When you reveal your plans too early to too many people, before those plans have had the chance to take root and find their strength, you expose them to something they cannot yet withstand, which is the weight of other people's doubt, their competing interests, and their unconscious tendency to shrink what makes them uncomfortable. This is not about distrust, and it is not about isolation. It is about stewardship, treating your inner world, your ambitions, and your emerging sense of who you are becoming as something worth protecting. The way a gardener protects a seedling from a frost, it is not yet strong enough to survive. There is also a subtler dimension to this principle that Gracián returns to again and again throughout his work. He believed that a quality of mystery, of being not quite fully legible to the people around you, was not merely protective, but genuinely powerful. When people can completely predict you, they can completely manage you. They know which buttons to press to get the reaction they want, which praise to offer to keep you performing, which threat to issue to keep you compliant. But when you carry a calm and unreadable interior, when you are warm and present and engaged without being fully transparent, something shifts in the dynamic. People pay more attention to you. They become more careful in their dealings with you. They treat what you say with more weight because they cannot be entirely sure what lies behind it. Gracián's phrase for this quality, translated into modern terms, might be something like, carry your heart in your chest, not open in your hands. Be warm, yes, be genuine, but let people earn their way into the deeper rooms of who you are. The third principle Gracián offers in what we might call the art of subtle strength is perhaps the most quietly transformative of all. He called it the discipline of observant listening, and in a world that has made speaking into a competitive sport, it may be the most radical thing he ever suggested. Most of us, when we are in conversation, are not truly listening to the other person. We are waiting for the pause in their speech that will give us permission to say what we already decided we wanted to say before they had finished. And there is nothing unusual about this. It is simply what happens when we are more interested in being understood than in understanding. But Gracián saw something that most of his contemporaries missed, that people, when they speak, reveal far more than the content of their words. They reveal what they are afraid of through what they rush to defend. They reveal what they desire through what they circle back to again and again. They reveal who they are beneath their performance, through the moments when the performance briefly slips. And the person in the room who is genuinely listening, who is attending not just to the words, but to the whole texture of what is being communicated, that person is gathering something that the speakers themselves may not know they are giving away. This is not manipulation. It is attentiveness, one of the most undervalued human capacities in an age where everyone is so eager to be heard that hardly anyone is truly listening. When you develop the discipline of observant listening, you begin to move through the world with far less friction because you stop being surprised by people. The colleague who seemed to undermine you, in retrospect, the signals were always there, in what they rushed to take credit for, in what made their eyes go flat when they looked at you. The friend whose support proved shallow, in the pattern of when they appeared and when they went quiet. The texture of the relationship was always telling you something you were too busy performing your own contentment to hear. Gracián believed that the world is not fair, but that it is, in many ways, predictable, that people move according to patterns shaped by their desires and their fears, and that anyone who trains themselves to read those patterns carefully becomes, over time, genuinely less fragile. Let us step back now and hold these three principles together, because taken separately, they are practices, but taken together, they are something closer to a philosophy of living. The intentional pause, the discipline of letting the first wave of impulse pass before you decide what to do with your energy. Selective revelation, the stewardship of your inner world, your plans, and your emerging self, shared only with those who have earned that depth of access. Observant listening, the practice of attending so fully to what is actually being communicated that you stop being caught off guard by the patterns that were always there. None of these are about withdrawing from life. None of them are about coldness or distance or the kind of brittle self-protection that mistakes walls for strength. They are all, in different ways, about developing a quiet center, a place inside you that the noise cannot reach, from which you can look clearly at what is happening and choose with full deliberateness how to respond. Gracián lived and wrote in a world that was in many ways far more dangerous than ours. A wrong move in the courts of 17th century Spain carried consequences that our modern world rarely replicates. And yet the wisdom he accumulated in that world feels not historical to me. It feels urgent, immediate, and strikingly relevant to the particular pressures of the moment we are each navigating. Because the core challenge has not changed. It has always been the challenge of remaining yourself, of maintaining your own clarity of perception and intention inside a world that exerts constant pressure on you to simply react, to perform, to scatter yourself across the surface of whatever demands your attention loudest. The subtle strength that Gracián described is not a technique you apply to specific situations and then put away. It is a way of being present in your own life, of choosing repeatedly and quietly, and without fanfare, to be the observer as well as the participant, the author as well as the character, the still point at the center of whatever happens to be spinning around you. Before we close tonight, I want to leave you with something small and practical, not an assignment, but an invitation. In the next day or two, find one moment, just one, where you would ordinarily react without thinking, and instead hold the pause for just a few seconds longer than feels comfortable. It does not need to be a dramatic situation. It might be a moment of irritation in traffic, or the sting of a comment in a meeting, or the pull to immediately check your phone when silence falls and the urge to fill it rises. Hold the pause, let the first wave move through you without carrying you with it, and then, from that slightly stiller place, decide what you actually want to do. That single moment of practice is the beginning of everything Gracián taught. It is, in miniature, the whole discipline of subtle strength, the recognition that between the world's demand and your response, there is a space that belongs entirely to you, and what you do with that space is, in the end, the most important thing about you. You have been listening to Night Wisdom Radio, and this has been the first episode of the Gracián Wisdom Series, The Art of Subtle Strength. In our next episode, we move to the second of Gracián's great pillars, the art of timing, which he considered inseparable from subtle strength. Because knowing how to act is only half the wisdom. Knowing when to act is where mastery begins. If any part of tonight's reflection stayed with you, whether it was the intentional pause, the idea of selective revelation, or the practice of observant listening, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these ideas feels most alive in your life right now? Your reflections genuinely shape where this series goes, and they help build the kind of thoughtful, unhurried community that Night Wisdom Radio exists to create. If you found value in this episode, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss the next night under the stars. Thank you for spending this quiet time here. Sleep wisely, reflect deeply, and carry these timeless lessons with you into whatever tomorrow brings.